It's over. Hey guys, what's going on? How's my sound quality right now? Can you guys hear me? Well, it's showing up as registered on my end. So, yeah, it's been a while. Uh I can explain. Uh my living situation had changed such that I wasn't really able to stream and really do much editing. But thankfully that's changed again and I'm able to do it some more. So, just a second. Let me see if I can turn this up a little bit. Uh, Hang on. Hey, oh, here we go. I think it's working now. Uh, there we go. Can you guys hear me now? It's registering on my end, and it looks like the sound is a little higher as well. So, I think I got it working. Anyways, yeah, it's been quite a while, and I've wanted to make some videos. Okay, that's good. I wanted to make some videos because there were things that just kept happening, but I was just not in really a situation to do that. I finally got bullied back into it. So here I am. I'm gonna try and be more consistent. Uh, okay, that's good. That's good. All right. I mean, like, this is the biggest happening since I did the stream with when the 12-day war happened, if you remember. And it was interesting because I made a prediction about the 12-day war. And let me see if I can pull that up. Yeah, no, I got kidnapped by. I became a situational Chad. I became the concubine for some Stacy until I decided to return to the land of the living, just out of voluntary desire. Take a look at this. Anyways, so the Houthis were just getting completely demolished by airstrikes and flattened, and they were in a situation where there was a massive cholera outbreak that affected 1/3 of the population. Like half the country was on the brink of starvation, and yet at the same time, the Saudis could not invade. The United Arab Emirates could not invade, and it was because they don't have land armies. They were relying on mercenaries. Mercenaries make horrible troops because they will not risk their lives for a paycheck. Nobody will. You know, what they will do is they will stand guard at the border and prevent others from coming in, but they're not going to invade enemy territory. And as a result, the Saudis actually had to surrender the conflict. They had to sign a stalemate treaty with the Houthis, who survived, as we know, because they then started to cause trouble in the Red Sea with shipping. They won that war despite being outgunned by a degree, I think, that is greater than anything else that has existed in recent memory since maybe the Afghan War. You know, because you can't win a conflict if you can't put boots on the ground. And I think the U.S. is not as bad as Saudis in the sense that they do actually, like, the Americans do have a ground army, but it's largely a mercenary army now. Like, there's no patriotic Americans that see serving in the army and sacrificing themselves to the nation as their duty. So I would actually predict that if America does end up entering the war directly, I think they're going to lose. And I don't mean that they're going to lose as in they're going to occupy Iran and they're going to just eventually get bogged down and then leave of their own volition, and then the Iranian government retakes the territory. I think they're going to fail to actually be able to capture the territory in Iran. Like, they might make some progress in some areas, but they're not going to get far. And it's because the Iranians have a much greater reason to fight than the Americans do. Like, at least in Iraq, there was some kind of pretense that sort of dumber Americans could get behind. There was like weapons of mass destruction, 9/11, they're terrorists, they hate our freedoms. There's none of that now. Everybody knows that this is a war for Israel. It's not going to last. It's not going to be like how it was in 2003. So if the Americans do enter the war, it will be a disaster for America. Oh, hey, $20. Thank you very much, Anonymous. Glad to have you back, Mercer. The space is less without you. Also, can you re-upload some of the old streams that got taken down? Yeah, so there were some... I didn't get any streams taken down except for the first one. There are streams that I privated, and I privated them because I was concerned about the content potentially being flaggable. But I have somebody who is actually archiving my streams, and I will provide an upload link to that once I get a hold of him, because he's actually managing the stream archives, not me. So I will get him to take care of that, and you guys can watch it. Because, yeah, those streams still exist. They're there. They're just not publicly available. And anyways, let me just catch up with the chats here. Yeah, I'm gonna be streaming again regularly. I was just in a situation. Look, Canada and Australia is the same way. Australia, Canada, New Zealand. We've turned into this sort of like these surreal like slave labor colonies where we've flooded in so many people. and it's really created a lot of instability. And I mean like real instability, almost like borderline third world kind of stuff. Not that we're actually like third world, but we're reaching a point where um we have like the problems of like roaming packs of homeless people. You're starting to see trash everywhere. There's a lot of drugs now. Like it's getting really bad really fast. And sort of the last 6 or so months, I've just been sort of preoccupied with keeping a roof over my head, which I have managed to do. So I'm okay. But that was the main reason why I haven't really been active. I should have said something, and I didn't, but I should have. Um, but yeah, like it's not like there's anything dangerous or whatever. Like I'm in a stable situation, but for a period of time it was a little bit turbulent, you know. Uh, anyways, yeah. Look, this is okay. So I had a friend of mine who was in he was into retail stock trading as a more as a hobby than as like a serious thing. And we were talking about what was happening, and I told him like you gotta get, and this was like when oil was 93, Brent crude oil was 93. I said you gotta pump, you gotta get into it now, and you gotta buy bull, because it's gonna skyrocket. Like this thing is not gonna go away. It's not gonna end soon. Iran's not gonna be overrun as I predicted. I mean, this is exactly as it's happening. We have carriers that where the sailors are actually sabotaging the carriers to get sent back to port. They refuse to be allowed to become cannon fodder. It's crazy. I never would have expected that. I think it was the Bush, um, the Navy ship Bush. Uh, First it started with the toilets getting clogged, and I was like, okay, that's there's some disobedience there. It's not that serious. It's like maybe somebody will get reprimanded. Then this fire happened in washer, the washing machines or whatever, or dryers or something, and it became a gigantic. It basically like destroyed the entire living quarters of the ship, and it made it inoperable. And that's crazy. Yeah, this is not investing advice, by the way. Not investing advice, at all. But the damage that was done was so extensive that it made the ship inoperable. Had to go back. It's like these guys knew what they were getting into, and the reason why people join the U.S. military, Americans join the military, they don't join it because they're patriots. They join it because it's a jobs program, more or less. Right? That's what they're in for. Uh, and they're not prepared to go into the strait and just die to a man in the Strait of Hormuz, right? Uh, and what Trump is attempting to do now is he's trying to gather the momentum to uh, engage in a ground invasion, but I don't think that he can even muster the political will for it. Like I was suspecting that it would happen, but now that I'm looking at it, I don't even think he's going to get to that point. I think they're just going to give up without even attempting it, which is actually more pathetic than what I had originally expected. So, and yeah, it's like late Republican Rome. It is exactly, and it's what's crazy about this is oh, Canadian A just tipped. Read Albert Pike's letter to Mazzini. This is all about religion. They, Venetian nobility, want a war between Christianity and Islam to usher in the New World Order and reduce the population. Well, I can tell you, geopolitically, this is something I've speculated. Yeah, I appreciate it, Canadian A. Thank you very much. I speculate that because the U.S. is going to lose, or Israel is going to lose the U.S. This is inevitable at this point. It's on its way out. Like this, everybody's talking about how this is a war for Israel. Like I had mentioned it in the stream as like we all know this, but they're never going to say this at the time. Now, 8 months later, you literally have people on like mainstream television and in the administration itself resigning at the top levels of the administration, saying this is a war for Israel. I can't, in good conscience, sign off on that. I'm resigning from this, and I'm like I couldn't imagine that this is where we'd be at in 8 months' time. So I think what the Israelis are going to realize at some point, and this is okay, this is a real hot take, by the way, and but I'm willing to stand by it in the long term, is the Israelis will eventually pivot from America to the European far right in Europe, and I mean like the remigration right. I suspect that this is where they're going to go, and it's because unlike in America, there is actually a strategic affinity between Israel and Europe, or the European far right, because they both have these populations that are largely, though not entirely, Muslim, that they want to get rid of within the country. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's, you know, international law or not, whatever. I'm just talking purely about the interests of these groups. They both want to do this. And in both cases, this would the entire Muslim world and the third world at large. And like the remigrationists realize this, I think, on some level, that this would make them like a pariah among the third world at a minimum, because this would be such a loss of face. And as a result, that this would create the conditions where Europeans, like Israel, would actually benefit from promoting these people economically, politically. Oh shit. Is my mic distorted? Hang on. Yo. Can you hear me? Yo. Hang on, let me try a different channel. Hold on. How's this? Is this any better? Okay, that's good. All right. So anyways, I see the Israelis eventually pivoting over to the remigrationists and promoting them, because ultimately they've dovetailed together in a much greater way. And also, like in America, they're static. Oh shit. Hang on. How's this? God damn it. Is this any better? No. Damn it. Okay, hang on. Okay. How's this? Okay. I don't know why I'm having these issues with my microphone. That's strange. Hopefully it... Oh no. Hang on. How's this? Hang on. Let's see. Okay, this seems to work. All right. We'll just tentatively continue what we were doing. Yeah, I know. They hear me. Hey, listen, I'm giving them strategic advice here. This would be good advice for them to listen to. Anyways, I see... Jeez, I'm losing my train of thought here. I see the Israelis actually supporting the far right in Europe, because they actually would benefit from it. And yeah, Russia would be one of the major dividers there. But I suspect that Putin is not going to get out of this war intact. I have a feeling that because the Ukraine war, in comparison to the Iran war, the Ukraine war has been a real disaster for Russia. Like they're doing a lot, like being dragged into a war of attrition. Even if they win the war, what do they get out of it? Like they get a few pieces of Ukraine that they don't need anyways, because they're already the largest country on earth. It's like there's no benefit that they get out of this, you know. And the loss will be like the diplomatic reputation with Europe. You know, we could say whether they should have lost that or not, or whether they were justified. It doesn't really matter. The end result is that it split Europe from Russia, and the only way for Europe to and Russia to be independent is for them both to unite. Like they cannot. Like if Russia attempts to stay independent, it's just going to become an appendage of China. It's going to be integrated into the Chinese industrial economy. It's like a gas pump. Like they won't have any, and maybe perhaps a weapon to achieve foreign policy. So they're not going to be an independent country. You know, and Europe is going to be incapable of competing with America. That's why I think the main strategy of the U.S. since the end of World War II is keeping the statics back. Let me see if I can catch it while it's happening. Oh, what the hell? You're right. Okay, here, let's try this. Oh god, I hope this strategy, excuse me, I hope this mic issue isn't going to be persistent, because this is an expensive mic. Let's see. Oh no. Let's see. Damn it. Yeah, I am a mic, so. Oh, this one's a good mic, too. Okay. Let's see. Okay, how are we doing now? Yeah, it's a USB. I think it's a USB. Um, it's a blue snowball. I bought it for like $40. Don't tell me my mic broke. Oh no. Hang on, you know what I'm gonna try? I'm gonna delete. Hang on. Okay. Yeah, I know, but it was good for a while. I mean, I've had it since the. Oh no, it's even worse. How's this? Let's see. I don't think we're staticky, are we? Okay. I'm just waiting for it to update on my live. Okay, if it fucks up again, I'll try and figure something else out. Anyways. All right. Where was I? Okay. I think we're good. Please, 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 my gods, please. Let's see. Okay, it sounds good. All right. I mean, look, I'll be honest. With the amount of time I've had this mic and the amount of use I've gotten out of it, I've had it since like 2019. It's served. You know, it's for the amount that I spent on it. Again, it was like $40, $50. It's done a great job. So I can't even really like. I'll even bury it in the background or backyard, rather. Excuse me. Anyways, I have a friend of mine. I'm gonna get back into the Iran war, but oh, hang on. I hear myself in the background now. I gotta mute myself. Okay. So I have a friend that put it really succinctly to me when we were talking about the situation that we're facing versus like the ink sphere in like 2019, let's say. And yeah, the mic wiring might be the issue. This is an old wire that I'm using. I might just replace it. And yeah, I mean, so the Israel and European alt-right, like I see that convergence happening, and I was actually suspecting that oh no, don't tell me they're static. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think maybe the cord is going on this. Thankfully, it's not an embedded cord, so I can just replace it. Hopefully, that's what it is. Anyways, I see. As I said, there's like a strategic affinity there, and also Israel, in a weird way, was kind of like this proto-fascist state, even from its foundation. Like there was this guy named Yitzhak Rabin, who became the prime minister of Israel at I believe in the 80s. He was the leader of the Lehi faction of the Zionists, and they actually actively tried to align themselves with Nazi Germany and fascist Italy during World War II to fight the British in Palestine with the goal of obviously creating like a fascist Zionist state. And it's funny because that European side, the Ashkenazi portion of Israel, is a lot more aligned with like 20th century European fascism in its origin than anything related to America. It has like almost no connection to America. Like the intellectuals that created Israel, they were members of like the continental European, like Austrian, French intellectual milieu. They had nothing to do with America. It's very fascinating. And as a result, like that was the original sort of conception. And then, of course, the colonial empires all collapsed. And they had to quickly come up with a new idea because all of a sudden they realized that they were surrounded with hostile Arabs. And the original vision that they had was that Israel would basically like co-govern the Middle East along with the European colonial powers. That was the original idea. It didn't end up that way, though. So they radically changed their minds, and they had to realign themselves with America. But even then, like even in the 50s, you'd read, there's like interesting stuff. I read this book by this leftist Israeli, actually. So he's not even like right-wing. But he would talk about how the Israelis would actually aid the Pieds Noirs, who were the French colonials in North Africa, to try and hold on to French North Africa. Like they actually attempted to support colonialism wherever they could find it. And they also supported South Africa under apartheid. That was actually one of their closest allies, was South Africa under apartheid. And the Israelis, unlike how they treat America, the Israelis would pull every stop out to try and protect this apartheid South Africa. And they would go out of their own way, including like incurring expense on themselves, to arm and support the South African military and also circumvent sanctions for them. And you could tell, like, that's because they saw it as like a real, that's what they saw as like their real fellow travelers were the apartheid South Africans. So, I mean, the leftists are correct about that when they say that. And I think you're going to see that thinking reemerge as the American-Israeli connection breaks down. And it is breaking down very fast in America. Like, it's, I don't know how long it's going to take for this to reflect electorally, but there is extreme hostility to Israel on the ground level pretty much everywhere now. And it's again, it's remarkable. I never thought I'd see it happen this fast, but well, I think they could eventually be. Like, the way I would try and position it for the Europeans is I would say you need to position yourself where the Zionists are going to be dependent on you for protection from their neighbors. And at that point, then you can dictate terms to them. And that's the only position I would take that would, if I was like a European nationalist, that's the only position I would take towards the Zionists. I wouldn't be trying to welcome them with open arms, because if they can get like a gay open borders Europe, with refugees welcome or whatever, but we hate Muslims and we support Israel. Like, if they could get that in Europe, they would take that. Like, they do not want a nationalist Europe, but they will tolerate it if they have to. That's the difference. So that's interesting. But as far as the Iran war goes, just to go back to that, one of the things that I found really funny about that war is that you have like this emerging element of psych warfare where it's like e-girl warfare. I don't know what dimension of warfare this is, but you're seeing, like, it started with the Iranian diaspora posting all of these like thirst traps on TikTok and elsewhere. And then there was this like big upsurge of support for them from chuds and typical others, that because obviously these are attractive women, sexually available. And you got the impression that they were advertising that, like, one of the reasons why we need to liberate Iran is that we'll have sexual access to all of these women. And it's actually quite incredible. And actually, here, while I'm talking about this, I will put this on. Like, it's pretty remarkable when you think about it. And then what's funny is, after these diasporoids posted their cringe and did their thing with their like e-girl prancing, you got the pro-Islamic Republic version of it in Iran. Now, it wasn't obscene, right? It wasn't like half-naked women, but they would find like the most attractive women that they could find, and they would have them like do a spiel about how Iran is actually an amazing place and we need to oppose the Zionist regime or whatever. It was pretty funny. Let me see here. Mercer, I was talking to this one, I'm assuming you meant like talking to, right? I was talking to this one Iranian girl and ex, so oppressive, hijabs, ran and moved to the U.S. Yeah, bomb my country, American daddy, so I can make it. Yeah, it's really, and it was really grotesque, to be honest with you. Like, they've quickly earned the reputation of being one of the most repulsive diasporas. Let me see here. And yeah, I knew an Iranian woman years ago, this in before Fake Cell. This was like a woman that was at my college when I was first at college, and we would talk about stuff. And the actual, what you realize when you actually talk to Iranians that aren't like ideologically wired in, the women I mean, is that their main concerns are actually a lot more mundane than what is being portrayed. Like, where it's like they have to take the hijab, or they have to keep the hijab on or they get beaten to death. And it's like, no, that doesn't happen. Like what the issue is in Iran is that like Iranian women have been fully integrated into the economy. As a matter of fact, Iran is like one of the most liberal countries in the Middle East. It's not liberal by our standards, but it's liberal by Middle Eastern standards, for sure. And like the main complaint of Iranian women is, oh, we are expected to have a career and earn as much as our men, but we're also expected to do all the domestic housework and whatever. Like this is the number one complaint that actual Iranian women have. It's not that bad. Like it's not like Iraq. Oh, I got a super chat. Let me see. Hold on. Canadian AI. It all goes back to Rome. Babylonian mystery schools were absorbed into the Persian Empire in 538 BCE. They later became Romans and started the Catholic Church. The noble families go right back to the 1st century. Augustine monks started Islam. You know what? I mean, I don't know anything about the details on that, but it doesn't, like, when you actually read the history, it's not crazy. Like, for example, the founder of Shia Islam was actually a Jewish convert to Islam. Like the Sunni Muslims claim this, and it's actually correct, technically. It's quite funny actually, because they say that the Jews started Shia Islam as a strategy to fracture and destroy the Muslim world. You know, like that's what they say. But yeah, no, Iran is not particularly based on the woman question. They're better than European countries, but they're not. I would still say that it's tolerable if you're a man, but it's tolerable in the same way that like the Caucasus is, like Georgia or Armenia, like those places. It's not like Saudi Arabia or like Afghanistan. It's nothing like that. But still, here, let me show the let me pull this up here. Here we are, the pro-Iran e-girls. Take a look at this. Now, I muted this because they're all speaking in Persian, right? So it's like nobody can understand them anyways. But you can see, like, they'll try and find the prettiest ones that they can parade in front of the camera to show, oh, we have attractive women too. It's almost like being an attractive woman gives you a certain kind of currency where it's like the legitimacy of your government is dependent on how many attractive women are supportive of it. That seems to be the emerging litmus test, right? If you're nothing but chuds and like chopped foids, and like a handful of chopped foids and mostly chuds, your political movement's illegitimate. It's really funny. And there was this one that I kept separate because it really looked like a... let me actually pull it up here. Is it still... It was like this welcome to Iran thing. And I thought I had it here. Oh, well, in the interim, I'm going to put this out here.
These are the type of men I think should be drafted into World War III first. Like, we should really prioritize them. DJs, men with podcasts, finance bros, any man that's ever been on Love is Blind, Michael Rappaport and Colton Underwood, politicians, Mr. Beast and his whole squad, men with ungroomed beards, like Dave Portnoy, men who comment on my videos that my downfall needs to be studied, Jeffrey Epstein. He's still alive. Oh, clavicular, for sure. Landlords, like, who do you think you are? Closeted gay men. You don't have to be drafted if you're gay, but closeted? Get the fuck out there.
Most of them have no idea how degenerate Western values are and how they're going to inherit the absolute worst of Western culture to their country. I have had these conversations with Iranians in Canada. Now, this is years ago. This is before COVID. So to give you an idea of how far back this goes, where I would be asking them and talking to them about why they moved to a Western country other than money. Like, obviously, making more money, that's a big one, right? But other than that, and they're always like freedom and this and that. And I remember there was this one guy I worked with, and he was a nice guy. He was a bit of an older guy. I think he was in his early 40s. And kind of a short guy, too. He's only like 5'5" or something. And we were talking about his arrival in Canada. And he told me that almost the moment that him and his wife set foot in Canada, his wife filed for divorce on him and kicked him out the door. And he was like, "Oh, but I still want to stay. I love Canada." I'm like, "Oh my God, man. Isn't that like a message from the heavens or something?" That at a minimum, okay, like I could understand wanting to make money and maybe send it home, but at a minimum, you're probably not going to have that great of a life here outside of that. But no, he was sort of perplexed at it, and he thought, oh well, maybe it was just a coincidence that his wife decided to leave him at that time. And I'm like, no, bro, you're like 5'4", and you're like middle aged. It's the reason why your wife left you. Like, I'm sorry, man. I liked him too. He's a nice guy too. Like, he wasn't in any way, like, you could tell he was not the kind of guy that would be like aggressive or abusive. He was a really good natured guy. So it was just rather sad. Probably his wife realized that when she arrived in Canada, like, she had much better options there. She didn't have to stay married to him. Maybe she, you know what? Maybe she even found that it would be easier to live on her own than, like, not even necessarily marrying some other guy or finding some other guy, you know? And just to go back to the what I was talking about concerning the refusal of service on these American ships, I've seen this a few times as well. Just 1 second here.
If a war kicked off right now in the UK, there's zero chance I would go to fight to protect the women of this country. I don't think I know any guys that would go to fight for the women of this country. Let's say I had a family, right, and then I went to go and fight some Jewish war for the government, and I came home to my family. My feminist wife would have probably already turned my son gay, turned my daughter into a communist OnlyFans prostitute. She'd be voting for more mass immigration. She would be voting for more hate speech laws. She would be phoning the police every weekend because I offended the non-white neighbour. She would be going to the abortion clinic every 9 months to kill my offspring, which I would have no say in. And if she did ever get to the point where she thought I was too much of a far-right bigot, she would probably divorce me, then take all my possessions, and then leave me homeless so that I can get killed by some non-white invader that she voted for.
Well, it doesn't really matter how accurate this guy's description is. I think in Scotland it's probably pretty accurate because Scotland is very leftist, especially the women. But even if, and to be fair, there is some nuance here. Okay, if you look at the voting patterns, it's not like women 100% vote for the left, men 100% vote for the right. But there are significantly more women. It's like 30-40% more women voting for the left than men, right? That is true. But the perception is what matters. And what he describes there is the perception that a lot of these guys have. And you could tell, like, looking at this guy, I mean, okay, he's not like a Chad or whatever. His skin isn't really that great. I can relate, especially as someone of partial Scottish background. We seem to have bad skin. But he's a decent-looking guy, you know, and he probably has a following on TikTok. It's like this isn't a sentiment that's confined to, like, subhumans on social medias like X or Discord or whatever, you know? Like, this is becoming a fairly prevalent opinion. Like, I'm not going to die if I'm not offered anything, and the people that I'm allegedly dying for have no sense of gratefulness towards me. You know? Yes, I don't know if you have a call, Mercer. Or are you asking if I'm taking calls? I was thinking of it. I haven't quite decided yet if I want to do calls today because I haven't been able to get the Steam overlay working, or not Steam, Discord overlay. But I'm thinking of it. Anyways, we British men are sick of English women. We prefer Irish and Eastern European ones instead. I want an American girlfriend. Yeah. Well, here's the problem is grass is greener is a universal phenomenon, right? There's like I've done it myself where I've been like, oh God, like the women that I'm used to, they kind of suck. I want to get a based woman from this other area. The reality is like the attitudes that women have that we don't like, they're much more universal than you'd think they are. You know, and now that doesn't mean that there are no differences. Like I'm actually willing to say, I think probably Anglo-Canadian women are probably a bit better than Anglo-American women from what I've seen, probably. And also Anglo women in the UK have a reputation for being a little trashy, to say the least, especially abroad on vacation, right? So that is true, but in a lot of cases, like the based Eastern European woman, I'm not so sure about that one. Like there's a lot of guys that are watching from Eastern Europe that could tell you. They seem based, but from firsthand experience, they're really not all that. And yeah, Iran might become the next Thailand is a very common sentiment that I've been seeing. And what's interesting is I think that because you have to remember Iranians they're not locked off the way that the Chinese are. Like you up until recently, like up until the war, you could get into contact with Iranians just through like chat rooms and stuff. Like you could find them. They weren't locked off the internet. And that sentiment has sort of filtered in a lot of cases where they realize in some cases what losing this war is going to mean for them. And it will mean Thailandification. You know, because Iran is not it's not an innately religious society the way that certain Middle Eastern countries are. I would include Saudi Arabia and Israel as much more religiously fundamentalist. I heard about Rehab Room making that video. I'm not so sure if it would manifest quite like that, but it would be pretty bad. And it would certainly lead to the dissolving of their population. They wouldn't, you know, I don't think Iranian men would be as badly cooked, mainly because if Iran didn't have any sanctions on it and they had like American technology and investment, they would become a rich country pretty fast. Like they have a lot of natural resources, and then on top of that, they have a relatively sophisticated population. Like I'm not saying that they are like you could turn them into Switzerland or something, but the Iranians are not like Syrians, let's say, or these other groups that aren't as sophisticated. They have a pretty complex culture and civilization, and they're also genetically similar to Caucasians, like from the Caucasus. Georgians, Armenians, those kind of people. Those are the groups that Iranians are most closely genetically related to. And those countries are not like Europe, but they're not shitholes either, you know? Like they're decent countries, they're okay countries. But Iran would definitely become a major tourist destination, put it that way. But the idea has gone out there. They know what they are going to be expecting. And I mean, we could see Thailand, we could see China. I mean, Thailand, it's funny because Thailand, they almost like designed their economy around catering to wealthier men, not just white men, but also Japanese as well. And it's almost like they made like sexual access to their women an economic strategy. And it's been a successful economic strategy too, if you think about it. I mean, wow, relatively speaking. The king of Thailand is one of the richest men in the world. As a matter of fact, I think he is officially like the richest man, or the richest monarch in the world. Anyways, his net worth is like hundreds of billions. It's absurd. So, and the Shah of Iran, whatever, if he comes back, I'm sure it would be something similar. I wouldn't be surprised. Anyways, let me see. Oh, I got another super chat from Canadian A. My prediction is that things are about to get so bad that religiosity increases 100 times in Western nations. Then this becomes an overtly religious war, Handmaid's Tales type shit. You watch, people are going to change. I do believe that. I think there was some studies on this, and you would see these religious revivals occur in populations. These are like sociological studies. Religious revivals would occur in populations where the kind of negative life events that would cause somebody to become religious in their personal lives happens to a large enough number of people that it becomes like a mass phenomenon. And it's interesting because, like, I remember a personal experience of this. My father's wife, who's my stepmother, her sister lost her husband and I think like 2 or 3 of her children in a car accident. And she became like super religious as a cope for it, you know? Like, it's a very sad situation, but you're going to see, I don't think that you're going to see people losing half their family to car crashes, but life is going to become hard enough that, yeah, people will turn to religion, and people will also turn to community as a function of religion. And maybe it could be a good thing in that way, you know? It might be a way of bringing people back together. And let's see here. What's the modus operandi for us low-status males right now? Well, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine about this, who's also a Canadian, and also is not from like a wealthy background or anything. So he's dealing with life as it is, the brunt of it. And he's also one of us, like he's in our circles. And he told me that it's like from COVID to after COVID, you saw a transition from like everybody sort of focused on the BP and looks maxing and like the despair of not finding a GF. And then you're starting to see people go into like survival mode, where it's not just that. It's like we go one rung lower on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we've gone from like wanting an intimate connection for self-actualization to just trying to struggle for survival. And I can kind of relate to that, because I'll be honest, one of the reasons why I stopped making videos is because I kind of ran out of inspiration to do stuff on like women, because I was more like the survival issue was taking a priority in my mind, you know? And as a result, the way that I marketed my channel was as like a BP channel, right? Like not an economics or geopolitics channel, though I dabble in that. And I didn't want to like make stuff that was just completely unrelated to the BP. But I mean, it does apply to us, right? It does affect us. We are the first casualties in this situation. You know, ironically, Canada, despite being one of the most disastrously badly run countries in the entire first world, really, other than Australia, I suppose. Australia and Canada, they're teamed up, and the UK, very close in terms of how shitty they're run. We're actually going to be slightly better off because we have enormous oil reserves that are only really profitable to refine when oil is above, I think it's like $65 a barrel or $70 a barrel. And they're going to be well above $100 for quite a while now, I think. And that's going to be, so actually we're going to be okay in Canada in that regard. I think Europe, I could see the EU tearing apart on the basis of this looming energy crisis. Because you have these wealthier Western European states that can tolerate to some extent the oil shock. But then you have these other these poorer and more recently developed, I suppose you could say, Eastern European and smaller states that cannot tolerate this kind of oil shock with like doubled energy prices or like 60-70% increased energy prices that have just completely destroyed them economically. They don't have the means of cushioning that. And they're going to demand that relations with Russia be normalized. And that could actually split the EU apart. They could actually lose like most of their members, which would be very interesting if that happens. And yeah, pure BP to Malthusianism. That's exactly how I would describe it. Exactly. And it's interesting because what I described with how Malthusianism affects culture, where you see as you have an excess of labor and you have really few resources, people become low trust. Like, it's not something that you're born into. It's not like it's in your DNA to be high trust, so to speak. I mean, in some extent, like, yeah, okay, there's certain populations that no matter what you do with them, they'll never be high trust people. Okay, that's just a fact. But there's a lot of people that if you take away the things that make them a high trust culture, they're going to regress to something else, and we're seeing it now. Like, there's a lot of like up here in Canada, there's a lot of shoplifting now that I've seen with not that I've ever partaken in it myself, but there's a lot of shoplifting I've seen with Zoomers. I'm talking like white Zoomers, and it's because they just have a total contempt for the law. And it's not necessarily because they think they're being scammed by the grocery store or something, but it's like an every man for himself attitude. It's like, well, if I can get away with it, I'm going to do it. Because if I can steal this box of food, that's one less box of food that I have to pay for. You know? It's Russia is cooked politically, economically, demographically. Yeah, this is why I think after Putin is done, I think Russia is going to win the war. Win in quotations. They're going to win the war by. I think this energy crisis is going to be what puts them over the hump. They're going to win in quotations by ending the war and annexing like maybe a quarter of Ukraine. And they'll get their land bridge, they'll get the Donbass. But it's like, these are really ridiculous things it's completely Pyrrhic victory, as they say. And I think who comes after Putin is going to be a lot more serious when it comes to this stuff. Because it's interesting, I knew Russians. Like, there was a Russian guy who, his family moved over in the 90s. And I knew him back when I was a teenager. And like, even back then, this was like the late 2000s or early 2010s. He was like he was a neo-Yahtzee back then. And there was a whole gigantic movement of neo-Yahtzees in Russia that only just barely got suppressed by the Putin administration. And like one of the ways that they suppress them is by getting the Holocaust questioning banned in Russia. Holocaust now became a crime in Russia under Putin, and that was how they went after them. It's interesting, but they've only suppressed them. Right? Like, it's only going to be a matter of time before that resurges. And as I said, like, I could see the Israelis, because here's the thing, okay, to bring back the Israelis in South Africa, the South African Boers, who were they were the architects of apartheid in South Africa, they actually sided with the Germans. They were pro-Nazi in World War II. They wanted South Africa, like, South Africa was formerly neutral. It was part of, it was part of the British Empire, but the Boers were very pro-German. And despite that, when the war ended and apartheid South Africa became isolated, the Israelis were more than happy to ally with them, even though they were former Yahtzees. It's pretty remarkable. So I could see them doing it again with the remigrationists in Europe. I could see them doing it, especially if their survival depends on it. Anyways, let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, I suppose I haven't talked about what exactly the Iranian strategy was. Oh, here, before I get into that, here, let's watch this. Just one sec.
I'm going to be honest, I can't go to Iran. I can't deploy to Iran. And it's not because I don't want to. I want to serve my country. It's just that I will be an OPSEC liability in any country filled with pretty caramel-colored women. She's going to be like, what's an op board? And I'm going to be like, it's hard to explain. It'd be easier if I just grab one and show you.
This is like the most mutt post that I've ever seen. Have you ever seen mutt memes, like Amerimutt memes? This is down the park an American mutt meme. It's really funny. Will you stay in Canada or do you plan on relocating? And you say grass is greener. Yeah, I mean, originally, one of the reasons I did my Geomax streams was I was trying to figure out what would be a place to move to maximize quality of life, I'm not politically neutral, right? Like, I wish that things could change in Europe, especially. I don't like what's happened in Canada, but I've also recognized that as an individual, there's very little I could do. And ironically, even if our side wins, we wouldn't benefit personally from it, because there would be a huge glut of excess men in our countries if all the migrants were removed. So that was originally the focus of my Geomax streams, was trying to figure out what would be a better place to go. Unfortunately, with what has happened now, I'm not so sure if those opportunities are going to exist. And it's because the reason why you could live somewhere like Thailand or Vietnam or these other countries was because they were growing economically. There was money available to be made, and you could find a niche, for example, as like an English teacher, let's say, or tutor or something, if you didn't have something from back home. Now that's going to be a lot more difficult because these countries are going to get hit with an economic crisis that is going to be devastating. It's going to set them back probably a decade. Thailand in particular, this could be the nail in the coffin for them. I don't know, because like they rely on something like 2/3 of their oil and gas coming from the Hormuz Strait, and all that's been shut down. So, and Vietnam as well. Like, Vietnam was an industrializing economy. They're not going to have that. It's gonna be rough. So I'm not really sure where we could go now. Because whenever you see an economic crisis like this, what you notice is, as bad as the first world gets hit, the third world actually gets hit worse. It gets hit harder. Now, if you can find something that you can make money on abroad, then that's a different story. But that's also tricky. Like, I have a feeling this oil shock that's coming, this energy shock, is going to translate into an energy crisis, and this is going to potentially pop the AI bubble, because AI data centers are heavily reliant on energy. They're very energy intensive, and when energy prices go up, that is going to directly impact the bottom line of these AI companies. And then the question is, do these AI companies have the kind of cash flow to justify these additional costs? And in most cases, they don't. Like, they're not really generating much of an income. They're not really, like, AI is useful, but but because it's so cheap for companies to use it, ironically, it's not very lucrative for the AI companies. And so if they don't get bought out or controlled by the government, they're just going to go bankrupt. And once the AI bubble pops, that's going to take, I think, a lot of these software jobs and like jobs that you can do remotely. It's going to take a lot of those away, I think. Like this is going to be really brutal, especially outside of America. Americans might be okay because African countries. Have you heard of that Russian guy in Kenya? Oh God, yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, it's one hell of a story. As a matter of fact, I've had like it's weird. Like I'll have like white inks that will send me videos of like white women with black guys, and then I'll have black inks sending me videos of black women with white guys and being like, see, our women are actually traitors, and we are inks because of this. And I'm like, bro, this is like the same thing in both cases. Like it's, if you look at the attractiveness of the guys, you know. Yeah, hey Jason Slazak, how you doing? So now I'm just waiting for there was 2 Hungarian guys that would argue in Hungarian with each other in the chat. That was pretty funny. And, who's winning the war right now? This is a good question, Nero. And actually, this is something I wanted to get into. Because when this war started, I was actually on the pessimistic end. Because I thought they were pretty well cowed. And that they wouldn't be able to... like they would just... Like what I suspected would happen is that they would just constantly get hit in their top leadership, like periodically by America, and then they would have shit blown up around the country, and then they would just not react, and it would just be a gradual wear down of their country until there's nothing left. That's what I was suspecting would happen. But then once they hit the U.S. bases, what made me think differently was the Ayatollah was attacked, and then the first thing they did was go after all of the bases, the U.S. bases in the Gulf. And this was before the U.S. formally entered the war. As far as Iran knew, it was Israel that was doing all these attacks. And the expectation was they would do the same thing they did last time and just lob missiles at Israel. Instead, they went after the entire Gulf. And what that makes me think of is that possibly they realized in the 12-day war there was this intense pressure by the Israelis to try and find the Ayatollah and assassinate him. And if they were going to assassinate him, it would have been in the 12-day war, because that's when all of their intelligence apparatus was still established in Iran. Like they still had the best intelligence in Iran. That's why they were able to catch Iran so flat-footed in that war initially, because they had like disabled several, if not like a large chunk of their anti-air interceptors. They had intel on where all these different high-powered government officials were located. They were able to take them out like simultaneously, one after another. It was so brutal when it was happening. You just saw one after another getting taken out. But they were not able to find the Ayatollah. But they were able to find the Ayatollah in this war. And that's curious. And what that made me think was, I wonder if they realized, the Iranian government, that Israel and the U.S. believed that their government was extremely top-heavy and fragile, and that if the Ayatollah was taken out, the whole thing would collapse underneath it. Like all these Arab countries, you know, like Saddam, like Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, like Assad in Syria. Like as soon as you get the top guy, the entire government falls apart because it's just a dictatorship. And the Iranians thought, well, we could actually use the Ayatollah as bait. And because at this point, he was like 86. He was probably not running anything. He was an old man, right? So probably they were feeding the Israelis information that the Ayatollah was at this or that location and he was in an undefended area. And with the intention that if they could bait the Israelis into attacking when the Ayatollah was vulnerable, and they fed that information to the Israelis, this would actually allow the Iranians to control everything that happens after that point, because they would then be able to determine when the attack is going to happen and their response to it immediately, which is exactly what happened. As soon as the Ayatollah was killed, they went after all the bases and fucked up all the bases. They went after the radar systems all throughout these Middle Eastern countries that were used to take down the missiles that Iran was launching during the 12-Day War. And so they're in a position where they're able to lob missiles at Israel without any containment and without any anti-air protecting Israel. And it's a war of attrition. And what's interesting about this is very reminiscent to the 1973 war that Israel had with Egypt, and I think it was Syria. It was Egypt, and I believe it was Egypt and Syria. And in the 1973 war, the Egyptians were given Soviet SAMs, which were anti-air defenses, and that grounded the Israeli Air Force. And because the Israeli Air Force was forced to ground, the war then became a land war, and it became a war of attrition. And that's when, if you guys have read anything into this, that's when Golda Meir, who was the prime minister at the time, called Richard Nixon and demanded an airlift of ammunition and supplies, or else they would use a nuclear weapon. That was what happened in the 73 war. So they almost lost that war. Egypt was about to overrun them because they're too small of a country. They can't handle an attrition war. So now they're in an attrition war with Iran. And what's interesting is the Iranians, we know now, because they've actually escalated their launches at various points. We know that they can launch, if they wanted to, they could launch so many missiles at Israel that it could flatten the whole country if they wanted to. But they're not doing that. They're doing several missiles, but they're launching them periodically every few hours. And what I think the goal is they know, and the way I've envisioned this, it's kind of like if you guys have ever played strategy games, or not strategy, it's more like RPG games, like Dungeons and Dragons. If you've ever encountered a lich is an undead sorcerer who is unkillable. He's like immortal, but he has a vulnerability, and that is his phylactery. And if you can find and strike his phylactery, you can kill him without having to engage with him directly. And I think this is what Iran realized, is that America, if it was just America versus Iran, Americans could just wear Iran out. Like, they could just siege Iran. They could just gradually plow it with dumb bombs. Like, it would take them a while. They could eventually establish air supremacy and then just bomb them into submission. That's what they could do. But because of Israel, all Iran has to do is make this war intolerable for Israelis. And they know that Israelis will demand an end to the war at some point. And the Americans, Trump will just accept whatever the Israelis demand, even if it's a totally humiliating defeat for America, even if it results in America losing all of its bases in the Middle East and being driven out of the whole region and dropping sanctions, for example. They will accept that if the Israelis are adamant enough in demanding it, even if it is totally humiliating. And the Iranians realize this, and I think this is what they're going for, because they don't want to put Israel in a position where Israel is going to launch nuclear weapons. So they just want to make it as painful enough that they eventually tap out. And that's their strategy right now. That, and also the Hormuz blockade as well. Hormuz blockade is another one of their cards that they're holding. And it's interesting because the Israelis have been attacking oil refineries and natural gas refineries and provoking an Iranian response. And I think their strategy is they're getting desperate because they realize what's going to happen. And they're trying to force the situation. They're trying to escalate the situation to the point where the U.S. puts boots in the ground and invades on foot. But I don't think that's going to happen. The U.S., there's no political will there. It's hard to say exactly how this is going to end, but I suspect it's going to be an American loss. The Israelis aren't going to lose anything. The Israelis are going to, their oil and gas is guaranteed by America. They're going to get a guaranteed supply. They might do some symbolic thing like, oh, we're going to withdraw from Gaza, even though Gaza is already done. But other than that, there's going to be no difference. There's going to be no change. Like, as long as the Israelis aren't personally paying any cost, they're going to take it. They're going to take whatever deal, force the U.S. to take the deal. Anyways, let me catch up on the chats here. Let me just double check to see if there's any super chats. Nope. Okay. Let me just do a bit of reading here. The Middle East will become a geomax location. I don't think so. Middle Easterners, they don't tolerate that sort of thing. They're much more willing to be violent to their own women, really. It's not that they'll be violent to us. It's that they'll be violent to their own women. It's the same in, like, Pakistan, for example. Now, the only way that they could stop that is if they had, like, a completely Western-controlled government that violently opposed that sort of thing. Yeah, that's all right, Anton. I'll read through it eventually. Though, if you guys want me to prioritize what you're saying and, like, guaranteed to read it, send me a super chat. Let's see. Yeah, I suspect that we're going into a dark place when it comes to geomaxing as an option, unless we have like serious legislation that gets forced through to allow for remote work, but also to protect workers from being outsourced. Like, unless we can get something like that, probably they're just going to use the economic situation to force an end to remote working. I could see. Yeah. Well, the Israelis will suffer in the sense that they're going to lose all of their geopolitical leverage, and everything east of them is going to be lost, basically. And they're also going to lose America eventually. But this is going to take a long time. Like, it honestly, it depends on the agency of Americans, which, to be honest with you, I'm not so optimistic about, because Americans are not known for their agency, you know? What I've noticed with Americans is that, like, world politics for them is kind of like watching a sports game, because they don't actually experience anything themselves. They can sort of watch from the sidelines, and, like, if they like a particular team, they'll cheer for it, but that's about it. Now, maybe with the oil prices going the way they are, this will be a sea change for Americans, because I know that when the oil crisis hit in the 70s, it was like a huge political backlash. Oh, we've got a donation from Daweed. What's with the GCC countries if the U.S. backs away? I have a suspicion that if they were to cut any deal, it would be with China. China would basically guarantee their protection, both from Iran and also protecting Iran from attacks related to the GCC. Because the Chinese have a good relationship with the GCC. They're thirsty for all that oil and gas. They need it, first of all. But then on top of that, they have a good reputation with Iran. They're credible with Iran. And that's something that the Americans cannot be. They cannot be considered credible with Iran. They've also blown their credibility with the Gulf states because they haven't protected them. They prioritized Israel in this attack. Honestly, this is like one of the worst things I've seen in terms of like reputation destruction. This has been like the most extreme reputation destruction I've seen for American history. Like, I thought that Afghanistan was bad. Like, because Afghanistan looked really bad, right? It was an American pullout. The government immediately collapsed, and the Taliban got a hold of all of those weapons, etc., and they paraded them around. But this is different. This isn't where the U.S. is invading a country and then they get bogged down and then they just give up and go back home. This isn't that. This is something different. And it really makes you wonder, what is this? Like, how is America going to save face from this? This is like, because if you've been following any of the discourse, you've heard people talk about the Suez Crisis. And the Suez Crisis was, I believe, 1953. This was like the last attempt by the British and the French to reassert themselves as colonial powers by trying to retake the Suez Canal. And the Soviet Union and the U.S. just said, no, we're not doing that. And they just immediately put a stop to it because these countries were economically fucked at that point. They couldn't afford to do anything. And all the U.S. had to say was like, we're going to shut off your dollars. We're going to call on your loans if you don't stop this attack. And they did immediately. It was quite funny. That was like the point where the mogger became the mogged, you know? Whoopsie daisy. Sorry about that. But I actually don't like using the Suez Crisis as an example. My preferred example is actually the Russo-Japanese War. The Russo-Japanese War was in 1905, and this was when Japan was emerging as a major world power. But it wasn't really acknowledged at that time. And this is something that it's kind of hard to conceptualize now, because when we hear white supremacist, we think of it as like an insult, or maybe not an insult, but like an accusation. Like, you're a white supremacist and you have to defend yourself from this accusation, right? It's like a negative. But when you look at the origin of the word in like the 19th century, this was considered a description of reality. They were just describing the reality of the situation. Is like these white European countries controlled the entire planet, basically. It's like, well, of course, the whites are supreme then, right? Therefore, white supremacy. But then, when the Japanese defeated the Russians, it was in quite an embarrassing way, too. Like, the Russian, I won't get into it because it's kind of history-spurging, but when the Japanese defeated the Russians, that, like, sent shockwaves throughout the entire European paradigm at the time, because it was like, okay, this non-white power just defeated the premier white power, or not the premier, but like a premier white power, a major white power, which is Russia. Yeah, here, is this any better? Anyways, they defeated this major power, Russia, and established themselves as one of the great powers among these Europeans, but they're not Europeans. And that shattered this illusion of white supremacy that existed at that time. And I think the Russo-Japanese War is something more similar to what is happening in Iran right now than the Suez Crisis. Because the Suez Crisis, it was basically like Egypt was helpless and getting overrun, and then the U.S., like the new superpowers came in and told the old powers to fuck off. That was basically what the Suez Crisis was. What the Russo-Japanese War was this sort of realization that there isn't just like the first world and then everyone else. It's like, actually, these countries that we previously discounted as these like backwards tin pot countries are suddenly able to assert themselves and actually defeat us. You know, not necessarily like conquering us or whatever, but they're able to defeat us in a strategic sense. This was like the most exciting thing about this war when it took off, and I saw that Iran was doing well. That was what I was thinking of, is because like the second order consequences of it is like a change of paradigm, you know. And the Middle East won't become a geomax location, but Iran will. Yeah, I do believe that. If America wins, that's what's going to happen for sure. Even I remember that there was polls being done by the ADL back in like 2016 or something, or 2015, of like the most anti-Semitic countries in the Middle East. And obviously, like, Middle Eastern countries closest to Israel were the most anti-Semitic, of course. It was like 95% in Jordan or something, and like 90% in Syria, 90% in Lebanon. But when they got to Iran, at least according to their own polls, Iranians were like the least anti-Semitic out of the entire Middle East. Like, they don't think the same way. they're not Arabs, right? They're Caucasus people. They're Caucasians, again, like Georgians, like Armenians. They're very similar genetic stock. So if you've ever interacted with Georgians or if you ever talked to Armenians, that's very similar to Iranians. And Armenian women and Georgian women aren't known for being particularly like ethnocentric or like trad, let's say. They're a lot like Eastern European women in a lot of ways. And yeah, Israel is way weaker than people think. Yeah, they are. They are, really. They're really powerful as an intelligence power. They're actually an incredible intelligence power in terms of espionage. And they're also very good with an air force. But as far as like ground force, they're incapable of taking combat casualties. And this is the vulnerability Israel has. Because they're a conscript army, and because Israelis, especially on like middle and upper class Israelis, they're not going. They have the ability to leave for Europe and America at any time. Like most of them have like dual citizenship of some kind or like passports they can easily get a hold of. And if the IDF casualties become in any way significant, like those people are just going to leave. They're just going to leave for Europe. They're not going to risk their own children in wars, like domestic wars, where they have like a 2% chance of getting murked with a missile or something, blown up with a missile. They're not going to tolerate that, and they're going to leave. And that would result in the entire Israeli middle and upper class leaving the country, and that would collapse the economy. And that's the reason why, because people see Israel's behavior, and it seems like they're just like this really vicious country, and like in terms of like how vastly they overreact to things like October 7th. But it's because they're so vulnerable to Israelis leaving that any breach of security for Israelis has to be responded to with extreme violence and extreme retaliation in order to deter it from ever happening again. They cannot tolerate that. And as a result, they cannot fight land wars because they can't take the combat casualties. Like they're saying they're going to mobilize 500,000 IDF to invade southern Lebanon. That's not going to happen, okay? And the reason why that's not going to happen is not because they couldn't win. It's because they would take so many combat casualties from fighting that it would just be intolerable for the public. They would not tolerate those casualties. So they're not going to do it. They're just going to do what they usually do. Like the way that they usually do it is they bomb civilian infrastructure. It's called the Dahia Doctrine, where they bomb civilian places. And the idea is that they'll just bomb cities and other urban areas until eventually the population demands that the militant group surrender, basically, or stop fighting. That's the way that they do it. And again, I think if they could do ground invasions without having to worry about their population leaving, they would do it. I think if they could stomach those casualties, they would do it. I don't think that they're doing this because they're just evil. I think it's because they have no other option. Oh, hey, Thomas White, how you doing? Is that the real Thomas White? Oh, awesome. It's good to see you still going. What percentage will you put on America turning Iran into new Thailand versus Iran staying Islamist versus them becoming the new Turkey? Are we talking about if they win or if they lose? Like, if they lose, they're definitely going to become, like, some kind of Thailand light. Like, they're going to get... Well, actually, you know what? That's not true. I suspect if they... if Iran loses, the government's probably going to collapse into several factions. Because the IRGC, like, the way that they're doing it right now, they have this, like, devolved... chain of command, where it's like these sort of semi-autonomous commanders that are operating in different segments of the country. They've been segmented into I think it's 12 different segments, and a IRGC commander controls each segment, and they're pretty much independent. They act more or less independently. If if the Iranian government were to collapse altogether, those IRGC commanders would probably become like warlords or something. And here's the funny part, is that if Iran does collapse, it's not going to make the Strait of Hormuz suddenly safe. Because Iran has who knows how many, like tens of thousands of drones and missiles in their stockpiles. And obviously all these IRGC commanders that are controlling these autonomous regions, they also have these stockpiles. Like, they know where they are. And if they end up fighting over control of the country, like what happened to Libya, let's say, you're just going to see random warlords like hold the Strait of Hormuz hostage in order to try and demand legitimacy, or try and like demand support from this or that government. That's what would happen, and it would basically make the Strait of Hormuz like a pirate's bay. It would be impossible to do commerce in there because it would be too unstable. It would be too. You could have like a random mine or a random drone hit you. There'd be no way of controlling for that. So it actually would be a disaster if Iran were to lose for everyone. Like the Strait of Hormuz would just be fucked permanently. Iran might become like a Thailand after that point. You would see a lot of Iranians leave the country, and yeah, probably women would be prioritized as refugees. And it would become kind of like what happened with Ukraine, you know, Ukrainian women doing their thing. But if Iran wins, yeah, eventually they're going to become sort of Turkey-like. I think they're already in that direction. Like Iran, as I said, it was never this sort of theocracy that people imagined it to be. If Iran wins, religion is good. Religion will become more and more of a symbolic thing. It'll become more like the Japanese with their Shinto. Like that's kind of how it goes. And actually, you know, something I was thinking about is there's a difference between the religion and like the civilization. And what you realize is that the Middle East has basically lost its civilizational confidence, if you want to think of it that way, since they were colonized by the Europeans, since the defeat and collapse of the Ottoman Empire, and the colonization of all these Muslim lands by Europeans. And then the latest humiliation was the conquest of Israel by the Jews, and the expulsion of the Muslims out of Israel, and their defeat of Arab armies several times. And to be fair to the Israelis, it was fair and square in many cases. They were just better fighters. At least in the early years they were. And this created this sort of civilizational morale collapse. And it's interesting because like you're seeing the same sort of civilizational morale collapse that happened in Europe after World War II. Like when all the European powers were destroyed basically by World War II, the power center shifted to America and the Soviet Union, and Europe just became a battleground. It lost its confidence as a people basically. And it's interesting because when you see religiosity in the Muslim world, it's almost like the extreme religious people or like the radicals. It's almost like they're coping because they realize their civilization has lost all credibility because they've lost, like they were colonized. They're not independent. They're bossed around by these other foreign powers. The Jews are controlling their land, like some of the most holy land in their religion, and they can't do anything about it. Like 6 million Jews or whatever in Israel. And this sort of extreme religiosity is like a cope for it. And what I think would happen is if Iran was able to drive the Americans out of the Middle East, and if they were to establish some sort of like new system that was more independent, this would restore confidence in their own people. I mean, like the entire Islamic civilization, if you want to think of it that way. And that doesn't mean more religiosity. It could even mean less religiosity, but like more of a comfort with being a Muslim civilization, sort of like, you know, Christian civilization. Doesn't mean you literally believe everything in the Bible, but it means that you're part of a civilization that has a certain set of values. And that could actually be what the Iranians do. They sort of recover the face or restore the dignity. They're like the only dignified Muslim country in the Middle East. Like the other Muslim countries are just like pawns of these other powers, you know, or they're slaves of these other powers. It's quite pathetic. So yeah, as I said, I think they would actually continue to become less religious, but ironically, paradoxically, the Islamic Republic of Iran's authority as a government would still be very strong. This war, and they're fighting back, is the strongest assertion of the legitimacy of the Islamic Republic of Iran that they could have ever done. No matter, like, any kind of display of religiosity would be irrelevant. It's about your government being able to assert itself as sovereign and to impose itself on its enemies and force them back and do damage to them. That's what really makes people loyal to a government. What's the story with Canada stand? Is that sustainable, or will they go European far right? You know, I've seen some interesting stuff out of Canada. There's this movement called the Dominion Society, and it's interesting. They're sort of doing more of a European style remigration thing than an American style like MAGA thing. So it's much more European coded, and they have this guy who's the public face. I don't know if he's running it, but he is like the public face. His name's Daniel Tyree, and he's like really clean cut. He talks well, like he doesn't come off as weird or anything. That could actually be just what we need. But the thing is, like, the demographic changes happen so fast in Canada that I don't think that we can really recover it. I think, like, if I were to talk to these guys who are in the Dominion Society or whatever, I would tell them the way that you get around this, or like the way that we move forward as a group. Like, I'm talking because this is my background, like heritage Canadians in quotations, right? Like my mother's side is Scottish, my father's side is French, so it's French Canadian, and so they're going back centuries. Anyways, I would tell him, like, we're not in a position where you can expect to like remigrate millions of people. I don't think that's going to happen at this point. Like, it's not even that we don't want it. It's that we've become a minority so rapidly that by the time that we have the kind of political influence to achieve that, we're going to have too small of a percentage of the population. So at that point, then the focus should be on, like, how do you fortify yourself as a minority and make yourself as independent as possible so that you're not subject to these other groups of people. You know, like, we got to start acting like a minority, like all these other minorities do, where they have their businesses, they have their communities, they politically organize for their interests, you know, that sort of thing. That's what I would say. Like, maybe I'm more of a doomer. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? But, like, last I checked, Canada's demographics were like, oh man, I think it was like 65% white or something. Like, we're not coming back from this, you know? And let me see here. I'm on Iran's side, but how are they going to win? Dozens of their military leaders got assassinated with their supreme... Well, no, but there's 91 million people, right? And I guarantee you, for every leader that gets assassinated, there's hundreds of them that are going to take their place. And unlike Iraq and Syria, the situation in Iran is such that, like, they have their own civilization. So it's not like it's a country like America or like Canada, where you have like these unrelated people that happen to occupy the same state and are like jostling for power or something. This is a civilization that's existed for almost 3,000 years, right? And like the people there, like, yeah, technically Iran is diverse in the sense Persians are like 60%, but it's like they're all Iranian ethnic groups. It's kind of like the Scottish versus the Highlanders versus the Irish versus the Welsh. Like, they're all very closely related ethnic groups. So I don't see them being able to break the country apart. And the way that they have things organized is that they're very, and it's interesting, actually, because as soon as the war started, as I said, Iran separated itself into these 12 autonomous regions, basically, that are self-governed by their own IRGC faction, or like IRGC chapter. And they basically act independently. And what's interesting is this is similar to what the Germans did in World War II. The Germans, the German commanders had a very high degree of autonomy in decision-making. They were almost just given like a basic set of goals, and they were just allowed to do whatever they wanted without any interference. Whereas the Russians, the Soviets, had a lot of top-down control. And as a result, the Soviets were very easy to flank and outmaneuver because they couldn't change tactics very fast because they had this top-down command structure. Iran is apparently organized itself along this horizontal system. And yeah, they are wiping out commanders, but I mean, at this point now, they're not fighting like they're not fighting a land war in Russia, you know, like where they're having to do maneuvers and this and that. Like, they're launching missiles at Israel and they're like hitting strategic targets, and they have like anti-air defense. At this point now, the heavy strategy part has already occurred. They've already taken out the key infrastructure, and they've already like rendered the entire Gulf state naked because they've taken out the anti-air defense, or they've exhausted them. Like, those were the strategic elements. At this point now, it's just an attrition war. But remains to be seen. I mean, who knows? Maybe the assassination attempts will eventually work. I'm dubious. I don't think they will, but it's possible they might. But as far as we can see, that hasn't succeeded in the past. So it's funny, is due to history, the Iranians could easily assimilate Indian immigrants to JFL. Oh, that was really funny. Did you guys see that that video on X of these like Indian students or something? And they're like, I guess they're Shia religious students, and they're protesting in favor of the Iranian government as Indians. And I'm like, this kind of reminds me of like Indians on student visas that are trying to stay in Canada, where it's like, yeah, of course they're going to support the Iranian government because they don't want to go the fuck back to India. I would, if I was an Indian in Iran, I would also support the Iranian government. Please don't deport me, please. You know, Ya Ali, I support Ali, I'm sure. And the 12th Imam, yeah, he's hiding in a well somewhere, according to Shia Islam. It's very strange. Yeah, the Persian Indian history is mostly a history of Persia either invading India and conquering segments of India, or Turks invading both Persia and India. and like, but the Turks would become assimilated to Persian culture, and then they would impose it on India. And that's kind of why, if you look at the difference between Urdu, which is the Pakistani lingua franca, and Hindi, which is in northern India, Urdu is basically the same as Hindi, but it has a bunch of Persian loanwords. That's the only difference. Like, Urdu and Hindi speakers can understand each other fluently. This is also why I find it so funny when you see like Pakistanis or Punjabis go, "Sir, we are not Indians. We are Pakistani. We are Punjabi." No, you're Indians. Listen, if you go to fucking Delhi and you talk in Urdu, they'll understand you and they'll talk back to you in Hindi. Come on, let's stop playing games here, okay? And a lot of Indians have Persian heritage, so yeah, they're basically acting like Latin American immigrants to Spain. Literally mestizo. Well, they have the same common origin. The Iranian Neolithic farmers, this is actually, okay, this is not anything to do with, obviously, but BP stuff or whatever, even the Iran war, but might as well. We're in like the home stretch at this point, right? So let's talk a little bit about archaeogenetics. So the Iranian Neolithic farmers, they actually originally, most likely, spoke some kind of variation of Dravidian. a Dravidian language. And when the Aryans migrated from Central Asia into the Iranian plateau, they displaced those people into India. And then when the Indo-Aryans arrived, they then displaced them further into southern India. So it was like waves of migration that happened. And so like the underlying connection there is this Neolithic Iranian genetic sample that is highest in, I believe, Balochis from Baluchistan, which are in southeastern Iran and southwestern Pakistan. And they're known for causing trouble. But this time the Balochis actually supported the Iranian government. Which, again, this is something that I've noticed. Like, Turkey has come out in support, and I don't think it's because the Turks love Iranians particularly. And also the Muslim countries have been really hesitant to condemn Iran. It's because they see this as a sort of civilizational struggle. This is basically, Iran is like the last dignified Muslim country that isn't controlled nakedly by America and Israel. And like this is like the last stand, and I think a lot of them realize it. And they're like, I don't like these minority groups like the Kurds and the Balochis are like, I don't like the Shia government in Iran. I don't like that they're Persians, but they're the only ones left that are standing up and doing something. So I'm not gonna oppose them. I think that's how they're thinking about it. Yeah, listen, Anton, this is what happens when you're in Canada and you interact with like 70% of your interactions IRL are with Indians. This is what happens. And yeah, Turkey is not going to war with Israel. They haven't even stopped the gas flows going in. The problem is Turkey is very vulnerable. Because they don't control their own oil and gas. It comes from Azerbaijan. And all that has to happen is the pipeline between them and Turkey has to get hit, and then it's game over. And also Turkey has their own economic crisis because Erdogan is really fucking dumb. And he's keeping interest rates very low because it's Islamic or whatever. But as a consequence, the Turkish lira is like hyperinflating and is a complete basket case. They're not in an economic position to fight a war. So they'll avoid it as much as possible. They need that money they're getting from Israel to supply them with gas. And if the U.S. sanctioned them, it would be a total disaster for them. And do I believe in greater Israel? Well, I think some of do I believe that that's what they want? Some of them do, yeah, like the Likudnik brown Jews, yeah, definitely. Because you have to understand the way that Israel works. Israel was like an Ashkenazi Jewish state right up until the 80s and 90s demographically, when the demographics started to shift towards the Mizrahi Jews, which are Middle Eastern Jews. And, here we go. I gotta open up these are the Balochi people. So anyways, the Mizrahi Jews they're a lot more like Middle Easterners than typical Jews, and they act in the same sort of way. So like Israel, as it's become more Mizrahi, it's become more like their foreign policy has become more crazy and more brinksmanship like, and the governments that are getting voted in are more and more extreme right wing. Like the Likud party that Netanyahu is a part of is majority Mizrahi being voted in, and they're in and this is actually kind of a symbolic thing. They're in a coalition with two other parties called the United Torah Judaism Party and the Shas Party. United Torah Judaism is a ultra-Orthodox Ashkenazi party. And they're only in the coalition. By the way, these are not the ultra-Orthodox are not pro-Israel. They're actually very anti-Israel, but they're parasitic. So they like suck resources out of Israel, and they also protest Israel at the same time. It's really funny. And they also like use their political influence in the Likud government to get free shit. Free funding for their yeshivas, exemptions from military service, that sort of thing. And there's another party called the Shas Party, which is the Sephardic ultra-Orthodox party. And that's basically the coalition that's kept Netanyahu in power. So it's like the Mizrahi Jews in combination with these ultra-Orthodox religious nuts. And this is the government of Israel for the past 20 years. And the secular Ashkenazis have basically been left out of power since the 2000s. They've been opposition party members. And it's interesting because as Israel becomes more Jewish, I suppose you could say, and less European culturally, it's becoming more and more like these other Middle Eastern countries, where it's like you've got like gangster politics where they're assassinating political opponents. You got more entrenched endemic corruption. You get more civil rights being rescinded. Like one of the things Netanyahu has done is because his wife got caught. I believe his wife got caught using state funds. Like she would get her government bodyguard to buy a ton of jewelry and other things using state money. And as a consequence, Netanyahu and his wife got charged with corruption, and it's naked, obvious corruption. The bodyguard admitted to it and showed the receipts. Like there's no question it's corruption. But Netanyahu has actually used his influence as prime minister to attack the courts in Israel and to prevent the courts from charging him. And I think his gambit, because like when I looked at the Iran attack and how reckless it was like, what exactly are they trying to do here? And I think he realized that, like, if he takes down Iran, if Netanyahu takes down Iran, he will be seen in Israel as untouchable. Like, he will become like the hero that defeated Israel's greatest enemy. And as a result, it would become politically impossible to charge him. And the deal was that if Netanyahu successfully takes down Iran and becomes like the godfather of Israel and becomes like untouchable and is able to kill off the independent judiciary and rule Israel until his death, more or less, he would then provide asylum to Trump if the left wins in 2028 and Trump gets chased for charges again. And I suspect this is the deal that they made between the two of them. Like, I support you staying out of jail, and you're able to defeat the judiciary in Israel, and we win this war in Iran, and you become the hero, and I become the hero in Israel, and then I can reside in Israel and be protected from extradition for crimes that the U.S. Administrations after me charged me with. I think that's the deal that Trump and Netanyahu made. And at this point, like, this is going to be really interesting in like 20, 30 years' time when we get documentaries made of these two men, because they are going to have like this really interesting history intertwined together. But yeah, no, this isn't turning out the way that they expected. And this is why I think they're getting increasingly desperate. Like, I think Israel's goal is to try and escalate the damage, the energy damage, to the point where the U.S. is forced to intervene to stop Iran's retaliations from like destroying all the energy infrastructure in the Middle East. I think that's because the only way that they could, in any conceivable way, win this war is through a ground invasion. That's the only way I could see them doing it. But even then, as I've said before, like I laid it out all the way back in my first stream during the 12-day war, that they cannot win a ground war in Iran. Not only is it logistically impossible, but they don't have any of the morale. You know, like these men are not going to fight and die. Like you had that guy, it's interesting actually, it's kind of symbolic in a way. You had that guy saying, no one wants to die for Israel. He was like this decorated, was he like a lieutenant or something? He was a ranking member of the U.S. military, and he interrupted this meeting of senators, and he was like shouting, we're not going to die for Israel, or no one wants to die for Israel. And they eventually dragged him out quite violently, and he became like a micro celebrity for a little bit. And then it was revealed that his wife is like a hijab wearing Muslim, and his kids are like, I guess they're raising them Muslim. I don't know. He's kind of like a George Galloway style, where it's like an unironic Islamo leftist in a way, like Islamo secular left, third worldist type. But still, I mean, this is an example of a guy who, senior non-commissioned officer. This is an example of a guy who went native with a foreign woman, probably because he couldn't find a woman of his own background, presumably. Or I guess maybe this woman was a better option for him, or more conservative, whatever the reason is. Like, this is a guy who's not loyal to the country now because he doesn't have a genetic investment in the founding stock of the country. You know, and you're going to see a lot of that. A lot of these guys that are like ambivalent in their loyalty. And it kind of also reminds me of that. Do you remember that in the Olympics? It's not the recent one with the two Happas, but there was one before that where there was this like half Chinese girl who defected to China and was playing for China in the Olympics. And you're going to see a lot of that too, because why wouldn't they defect? Ironically, I think in America, the only people that would have any kind of loyalty to heritage America in a way would be like the ones that are mixed with Hispanic to some extent. I think would be the only ones that would have, like, because Hispanics are indigenous to the Americas, so it's not like they have loyalties to like a Middle Eastern country or something, or an Asian country, you know. So I think Hispanics to some extent, they're still going to be loyal Hispanics, but for these other groups, I don't see it. And it doesn't mean that they're all going to be like defecting or something, but they're certainly not going to be supporting America's wars the same way that you had all of these millennials support the war on terror in the 2000s. It's a completely different scenario, you know. And it's going to be, I don't want to say exciting because it's probably going to be disastrous for those of us in the West who have to live with the consequences, but it's going to be interesting to see this unfold as time goes on. And yeah, Hispanics are, well, actually there's a lot of Hispanics that are mixed with Sephardic Jews, actually, because there's a lot of Sephardic Jews that left for Latin America when I believe it was the Alhambra Declaration, the expulsion of Muslims and Jews from Spain. Like, they were formally forbidden from going to the colonies, but they went anyways. And they just sort of dissolved into the local population. They couldn't maintain their communities. But yeah. Anyways, guys, I think we are going to wrap it up, because we're approaching the 2-hour mark now. I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed that I wanted to cover. We talked about the Iran war. We talked about the consequences. We talked about the economic fallout. Yeah, I'd say that's about it. Well, anyways, guys, I'm going to make it consistent again. We'll probably continue talking about the updates of the Iran war. As a matter of fact, the next stream will likely be talking about the energy crisis and how this is going to affect us, because, again, like, I'm partial to the woman issue, but like, it's the survival issue takes precedent over the woman issue, you know? So we're definitely going to be talking about a lot of stuff like that. Anyways, guys, we'll talk to y'all later.